and India increase the engagement of businesses, institutions, and individuals in agriculture for Australia and India. That is the purpose of today's very important webinar. The Australia-India Business Council was founded to foster bilateral relations between our two countries way back in 1986. We're the only premier non-profit organization with a mission to promote trade and dialogue between India and Australia through nurturing and maintaining close relationships in both Australia and India with federal and state government agencies, the diplomatic corporations and industry. And pursuant to to Prime Minister Morrison and Prime Minister Modi's virtual summit, agriculture and ag tech is a very important part of that agenda to increase trade and investment. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Con, who will take you through the introduction of where we're at for this webinar. And of course, Con is our National Industry Chair for Agribusiness. And he has a strong passion for helping clients and has got extensive experience from renewable energy, food safety, water purification, healthcare, and infection control. So without further ado, Con, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Before I welcome all of our honoured speakers, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to all our speakers and viewers today to the 4th AIBC Agribusiness Chapter webinar on shaping the future of water usage in agriculture. To ensure that we keep to the tight schedule, each speaker and their bios slide will be introduced one at a time by Jim. Recent international economic jolts have highlighted the need for businesses in Australia and India to forge closer ties. Discount this opportunity at your own peril. The enormous size of the market in India will be the magnetic field, and the availability of the Australian agribusiness expertise will be the conductor. Whilst COVID-19 has changed the way we do business, it has not changed the way we think and develop ideas. It is more a case of less travel and more homegrown thinking. Mention robotics, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and you think mass data. In agriculture, satellite and strategically placed sensors can record the data from the flow of water, especially at times of flood. It is the utilisation of mass data from these rare events that requires innovative thinking to harvest and redirect huge volumes of water. For example, nearly 40 years ago, a retractable barrier system called the Thames Barrier was designed to prevent the floodplain of most of Greater London from being flooded by exceptionally high tides and storm surges moving up from the North Sea. It has been operational since 1982. When needed, it is closed. That is, it is raised during high tide. At low tide, it can be opened to restore the river's flow towards the sea. Can you imagine this type of technology that senses the direction of the flow of water and then sends a message down the river to take some of that water to a side reservoir and is used to water crops and animals? This technology can then be used to limit the damage that floods can have on townships and even limit the damage to vibrant topsoils that are swept downriver, which can take years to revitalise. In most of my talks, I have this tendency to focus on two words: food and water. The technology and innovation that is built around the simple connection will have an enduring influence on the shaping of the future of agribusiness. Our first speaker today is Kim Russell, co-owner of Russell Agricultural Consulting, and also the chair and principal consultant of the Stump Jump Foundation in Australia, who will address us on shaping the future of water use in agriculture and Indo-Aussie perspective. Our second speaker, Dr. Sharad Jain, is the ex-director of the National Institute of Hydrology in Roorkee, India, and the Visiting Professor, Civil Engineering Department of the Indian Institute of Technology in Roorkee, who will address us on environmental flows for sustainable water resources development. And our third speaker, Professor Bhaskaran, is the Pro-Vice Chancellor, International Research Partnership in Deakin University, Australia, who will address us on a broad range of water issues with some Australian case studies. Our fourth speaker, Professor Sitharam, is the Director of the Indian Institute of Technology in Guwahati, India, who will address us on coastal zone management of floodwater, agriculture, and the role of coastal reservoirs. The influencer of Australia working with India is in the following statistics. By 2035, India is projected to be the third largest economy in the world. By 2025, one-fifth of the world's working age population will be Indian. By 2030, 51% of Indian households will be middle income or higher, up from 24% in 2018, contributing to a quadrupling of consumer spending by 2030. The value of agri-food consumption in India is predicted to double between 2019 and 2050. Cooperation and collaboration between our two nations will allow businesses on both sides to take advantage of the impending opportunities. This is a true B2B landscape. We should not forget the opportunity to make in India. It is an opportunity for Australian businesses that are clean and green with knowledge and skills to take their IP to India, to find their long-term joint venture partner and establish a central business that can distribute not only in India, but to that region of the world. The time to meet market engagement is now, particularly with the Australian government's implementation of the India economic strategy. Australia has a competitive advantage and shows in its clean and green status, knowledge, skills and infrastructure, counter-seasonality and proximity to India. So take advantage of it and trust in its willingness to form a permanent long-term relationship. Whilst COVID-19 has changed operational strategies, the Australia-India Business Council will continue with determination to promote bilateral trade on a business-to-business basis between Australia and India. So keep in touch with us at the Australia-India Business Council for further updates, as there are clear signs of a significant significant positive shift in the Australia-India relationship. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much, Con. And as indicated earlier, our next speaker is Kim Russell. And you can see from the profile that'll go very shortly up, he is the co-owner of Russell Agricultural Consulting, chair and principal consultant for the Stump Jump Foundation Australia. He brings with him a absolute wealth of experience. And it's with great pleasure that I now introduce Kim to address us. Kim, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. How's that sound? Is that okay?
It's very good, very clear.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. I will speak to the slides as they come up, and I'll just say next when they're ready to be changed. I'd just like people to understand that there's some of the slides are quite dense with information, and I'll skip over those, relatively quickly, but it will give something, if people request a copy of the presentation, something a little bit in more detail. So, shaping the future of water use in agriculture, an Indo-Aussie perspective. I've been to India 30 times in the last 6 years, so I have had a lot of experience and have travelled extensively and spent much time in India. Next slide, thank you. We can go through that, past that one, thanks. Okay, so I'm just going to, clods, compost, climate change are all significant parts of the puzzle. And cool, clear water is the essential one, but unfortunately, there's not enough of it to go around. Next slide, please. In 1987, I was working, and Con knows this property. This is Gunderline Station out in the Riverina. The CO2 levels in 1987 were 346 parts per million, and I certainly didn't look very worried there. Next slide, please. So in 1987, could you click the next slide, please? Yeah, that's in 1987 down there, you can see how quickly the CO2 levels in our atmosphere have increased in the time of my son was 1 year old in 1987, and I have grandkids of 1 and 3 now. So a rapid change, and one that's impacting on our future generations. So you can see from that diagram that we are well outside the envelope of what is normal for CO2 in the atmosphere. Next slide, please, Vish. So there you can see my grandkids, and I think we're all trying to have a view to the future. Next slide, please. So that's the global situation of CO2 as measured in the Vostok ice cores, a very great bit of work done back in the 90s. This shows where Australia is situated in the per capita CO2 emissions. We're right up there with the bigger countries, and you can see the difference between Australia and India. Next slide, please. That's a big difference, and we'll quickly look at a couple of other aspects of the situation. Water scarcity in the major basins around Australia. You can see that Australia is moderately stressed, although many of us would beg to differ with that description. And in India, it's under considerable stress. This slide also shows that nutrition in children is a significant issue. Next slide, please. It hardly seems fair with when you look at the per capita contributions. I like to think of an NPK strategy that many farmers use. We use networks, a knowledge of policy, and deploying and developing our own knowledge. Next slide, please. Irrigation and monitoring technology, as Con alluded to. It's important to improve and maintain that. Water use efficiency, plant growth, soil quality, yield, and product quality, and you'll see these themes through the slide. I won't go through those, but they are key stages of crops that need monitoring and control. Next slide, please. So 3 examples of the sophisticated technology used in Australia and overseas that can achieve this. Now, I realise the application of this, there may not be an appetite all over India, but I know that there is in many places. And you might recall that Dr. Peter Cull gave a presentation through the AIBC before Christmas. And this is a technology where there is very close management of individual plants. And what we're working on, next slide, please, is to understand what is happening on the ground, and then getting correlations from that, from aerial imagery, either by drones or airplanes or even satellites, so that real-time decisions can be made across the landscape using these very sophisticated soil moisture and plant moisture monitoring techniques. Next slide, please. This is a technology developed by Richard Sturzaker, who many of you would know, and he's deploying this very cost-effective technology in many places in Africa. Next slide, please. A key issue is going to be that of recycled water. Australia is already the world's driest inhabited continent, it will feel the full force of further climate warming. But Australia is also home to the world's most advanced reforms in water trading systems. Next slide, please. A lot of these shots are taken in India, where moves to drip irrigation. Next slide. And compostable mulch film to preserve soil moisture. And the work that we did there in many of those trips over there was done through the sponsorship of BASF that developed that technology. Next slide, please. Geographic information will be a very critical part of monitoring plant growth, etc. Next slide. We're also working with drones, autonomous aerial vehicles and ground vehicles in Australia. This technology is one that we're working with, and we'll have tractor platforms to put it on in the coming year. The technology came out of the military, so collision avoidance and what have you is a key part of it. It's working. We can see here spatial data that is captured in aerial application of baits in cotton. Next slide, please. We're working on capturing of these, this data and correlating it with yield maps. Next slide, please. You can see here a trial area. Next slide, please. And within that trial area, there's a great deal of data that's captured. Next slide, please. And we've developed a plot finder, a boundary, we call it a boundary rider, where we can identify plots, fields, etc., and link a great deal of data as per those spreadsheets that you can see there into each plot, so that each plot can be compared with each other in that field or indeed elsewhere across a range of plots in organisations or research companies. Next. This is just a depiction of some of the handheld technology that is going to be a major part of the play in India. Whilst I was in India, I learnt a very important word called jugaad, and many of you would know it, and it's a flexible approach to problem solving that uses limited resources in a very practical and innovative way. And countries around the world are beginning to adopt this jugaad approach. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're working on is a bid for a cooperative research centre to look at organic waste management and developing technologies to my timer. So this CRC will help us in the industry develop clean systems of fertiliser production from waste streams. Common new contaminants nowadays like PFAS are a very critical issue that needs to be addressed, and this CRC will address those and many other issues. Next slide, please. The process that we used in India, in West Bengal, which was very successful, and you can you'll be able to see that video on request of the project in there. What we're trying to develop are nutrient loops from communities where fresh organic waste is kept containerized in compostable bags and then put into compost systems at the local level. Next slide, please. Just an example of where we were doing the work and trying to avoid roadside dump sites like is very common in India. Next slide, please. This is an example of, that's my colleague Mahesh over there, he's in Bangalore, and Mahesh, and we had this compost, and Mahesh has managed to make a nanostructured silicon foliar fertilizer from a compost tea from that. So these are the sorts of technologies that we can deploy and add value and effectiveness to these products. Next slide, please. How am I going for time?
You're over time at the moment.
All right. Okay. Well, just go through these next few slides for me, please, just quite rapidly. You'll see there it's all about communities coming together, managing water. Next slide, please. Education and using young people is very important. Next slide. This guy looks like he's looking into the future, and we wonder what that future might hold. And these kids, if we secure our water future, we will secure theirs as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, Kim. And I think your slideshow gave a very good comprehensive look into the Indo-Australian perspective in relation to clods, compost, climate change, and cool, clear water, and also the look at the nutrient loop, and of course that new word jugaad. That's very good. I think that's flexible problem solving. We'll take that on board in the ARVC as well. Our next speaker now is actually logically flows on, and that of course is Dr. Gerard Jain, and we're going to look here with his presentation on the environmental flows for sustainable water resources development. And they're very impressive CV there for Dr. Gerard. And it includes surface water hydrology, as well as his international linkages. And he's a well-known author, 235 technical papers, as in your screen. Very impressive. Over to you, Dr. Gerard.
Thank you.
Gerard, you'll need to unmute and start.
I have unmuted. Am I audible, please?
You are now audible. Yes, go for it.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So, good afternoon from India, and I welcome you all for this presentation. I'll speak on environmental flows for sustainable water resources development, because I see there is a great need to preserve our ecosystem and yet manage the water resources so that these are beneficial to the society. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as we see it, no, please go back. Water resources management is basically a balance among the needs, and this kind of balance is needed so that we are able to match the natural availability of water with the demands, as well as provide reliable, adequate, and good quality water for municipal industrial needs, for agriculture needs, for energy generation, etc. While doing this, we need to protect the society against disasters, but it's very important to realize that we also need to protect our environment, because we derive lots of benefits from environment in terms of ecosystem services and so on. Next one, please. So this slide shows the water allocation puzzle. On the left column, we see the demands for water from various sectors, chiefly irrigation, hydropower, municipal, industrial, and ecosystem services. In India, as well as in many other countries, about 85% or even more demands for water come from irrigation sector. And therefore, for sustainable development and management of water resources, it is important to manage the irrigation water demands in a judicious manner. The left-hand column in this figure shows water availability. And as you can see here, the demands in most of the cases are more than availability.
Further, because of population rise, because of expanding economies, demands are increasing, but available quantity of water is falling because of climate change and many other changes. Next one, please. Next slide. So this slide shows the concept of hydropower generation by what is called run-of-the-river projects, typically in mountain reaches, where a dam or diversion is constructed which diverts river water to a powerhouse which is located at a lower elevation, and the elevation difference gives the energy to generate water. What happens in this process is that there is a reach of the river which is called diverted reach, and most of the cases there is very small or no water in the diverted reach, which causes fragmentation of the river. Next slide, please. So this here lists the issues and challenges in river management. We have two cases here. The upper figure has been explained, but lower down in the lower figure, we see a diversion weir in the plain areas where water is being diverted through two canals on left and right hand side to meet the agriculture needs. Now, what happens as a result of this diversion is that the river downstream of the weir is almost dry except for the wet period. And this causes lots of problems in environmental sustainability as well as in maintaining biodiversity of river. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a figure where we can see two diagrams on left and right. The left-hand diagram shows the position of groundwater in 1975 in a part of North India, and the right-hand side diagram shows groundwater as of 2018. And you can very well see that there is a huge depletion of groundwater because water has been pumped out for quite some time to meet various agriculture needs. And because of this, the water tables have fallen so low that the connection between river and aquifer is now missing. Earlier, water used to flow to the river from aquifer during some part of the year, but now groundwater is at a very low level. And so you see there is no possibility that water flows to the river from groundwater. And in fact, the river contributes a lot to the groundwater, which is affecting the lean season flow. Next slide, please. Now, all these developments are a threat to biodiversity of the river because of fragmentation, because of invasion of habitat by alien species. The habitats are shrinking, their quality is degrading, and all this is damaging the aquatic life, fishes present in the water, and so on. Next one, please. So with this background, now we move to, next slide, to environmental flows. And the next slide, yeah, this slide shows the definition of environmental flows. Of course, the audience in this gathering is very well aware of the environmental flows and their definition. In my view, environmental flows represent a trade-off between development and conservation. And while ensuring environmental flows, we need to make sure that we are trying to mimic the natural flow regime, not just leaving a small quantity of flow in the river. The environmental flows also represent the concept of river continuum, both in longitudinal as well as in lateral direction. And due to importance of environmental flows, now these are being considered and included as a part of river basin management in various countries. Next one, please. Next slide will, yeah, this slide shows the methods which have been developed to estimate environmental flows, starting from simple hydrologic methods. We have methods which are called holistic methods, which make use of large volume of data from different sectors as well as require expertise from different sectors. Next one, please. So when we come to implementation of environmental flows, The experience shows that assessment of environmental flows is a bit simple, quicker. However, implementation of this aspect or implementation of environmental flows is slower, tedious, involves lots of pushes, pulls, etc. In most of the cases where environmental flows are being assessed and implemented, at least in India, these are the cases where water is already over allocated. So a big challenge is to find this additional water. And now the question is where this additional water is there present and how this additional water can be obtained. So we have two types of solutions. One is, of course, supplied side solutions, which involves reoperation of existing reservoirs. It also involves creating additional storages to hold the water in the wet season that can be released in dry season. These storages can be big as well as small. Next one, please. Finally, we have these demand side options, and in demand side options, the role of agriculture water becomes very important because, as I already mentioned, more than 85% of water use in India is for agriculture, where the water use efficiencies are very low. The crops where water can be saved in India is rice, sugarcane, and wheat. And we need to target the places where water productivity is very low, less. In our country, at various places, crops are being planted which are not suitable for the soil, which are not suitable for the climate. So it is essential that the cropping patterns are rationalized so that we have the crop which is suitable for that particular geography. We need to implement water saving technologies. My previous speaker has already shown you example of sprinklers and drip systems, which result in substantial saving of water. However, there is a feeling that the farmers resist when they are told to reduce water demands or water withdrawal. But there are now success cases in many parts of the countries, and it is very helpful and necessary to build these success stories. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide, which shows a picture of desert of India. So as a result of scientific studies, now we have directives coming from government. And this particular slide refers to the environmental flows for two stretches in River Ganga. And if these flows are implemented, then it will be helpful for agriculture as well as for environment. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you again for giving me this opportunity to share my views.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Sharad, for that very comprehensive presentation on the environmental flows and how it links into sustainable water resources development. It's now my pleasure to introduce Professor Bhaskaran, who is going to now look at the other side of this. This is sustainable water use in agriculture and sharing with us this training experience. And you can see from his profile there, it's a very distinguished profile as a Pro-Vice Chancellor, International Research Partnerships, a very strong connection there into the founding members of the School of Engineers at Deakin University. And of course, he's got a great international network, a strong sense of the digital connectivity, and really, really looking forward to your presentation. So over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you pretty well. Go for it.
Okay, I think it's a natural flow from Kim. We heard from Kim about what's happening with the technology as well as with the Professor Jain, Dr. Jain. And I was going to talk through some of the experience we have in Australia in terms of managing the water for multiple end users as well. So next slides, please. So as we already mentioned, Australia faces major challenges in getting sustainable water supply because of the drying climate and also a need for additional water supply for various purposes as well. And the climate change or climate variability is give us even much more difficult challenges in trying to balance the water availability for various industries, including agriculture and forestry and fisheries as well. Across Australia for the last 100 years, the temperature has gone up significantly. That creates some challenges in the productivity as well. Because of the variable climate and the farmers have adapted and used to use less amount of water in the meantime to continue the production, the agriculture productivity as well. Next slide, thanks. So you'll see this is a snapshot of in 2018-19, the entire continent of Australia went through a significant shortfall in rainfall across, other than the northern part of it, and majority of the agriculture productivity land in the southeastern side of Australia as well. And you'll see the variation on the monthly rainfall across the country is a significant down from the normal curve as well. Next one, please. So in this aspect, my focus is very much on looking at the water for food, particularly looking at irrigated agriculture. Uses about 60% of the available water available for human use. And irrigated crops makes up to about 30% of the Australia agriculture production. So there's 70% come from non-irrigated farms as well. The significant difference between the Australian context and the Indian context is Australian farmlands are fairly large and also heavily dependent on surface water. We'll see further down the track. So the experience of the farmers, as well as the resilience of the farmers over a period of time, the lower water allocation, but continue to produce enough food for all of us as well. So during that drought part of it, particularly the irrigators get a vast bulk of water available in the Murray-Darling Basin, which is one of the bigger catchment area where our food production come from. But the state and territory governments allocate water within a particular catchment. So in Australia for quite some time, the water is managed on a catchment or a basin basis as well. But the drought has a significant impact on available water. Therefore, available water for agriculture and food production is limited. Next one, thanks. So you'll see across the water usage, 70% of the water is used for agriculture, 20% for the urban, and 10% for the industry. In this water, 80% of our water source supply come from surface water, 17% from the groundwater, and then only very small fraction of desalinated water or recycled water as well. So we are heavily dependent on surface water. Therefore, the impact of climate change and variability has a significant impact. Next one, thanks. So if you see the agriculture usage, the total water allocation, it's varied depending on the availability of the water and also the amount of water used in various states. You will see the majority of them are surface water across the 3 major states, and then they're very small in the other states as well. So the agriculture water usage play a significant part in our entire water management. Next one, thanks. So you see some numbers, I'm not going to go through it. It gives you, even though there's a downward availability of the water, therefore the amount of water used in 2018-19 is less than what we had in 17-18 as well. So this varies significantly. And some of the heavy water usage for us, cotton, fruit and nuts, and sugar cane and rice as well, and which are high intense water usage plants. Next one, thanks. So you'll see where the difference between 2017 to 18, the availability of water has a direct impact on the amount of water we use. And Also, we have some idea of how much water used per hectare for various crops. So one of the things we have been working from the research side of it, working with the farmers and giving them advice on climate variability and availability of water so that they can choose different products to produce in their farm as well. So next one, thanks. So mention about the Murray-Darling Basin. Murray-Darling Basin is the food bowl of Australia. It cut across 4 different states. It contributed by 2 major river systems and capture large area of agriculture productive land. Just to compare the size of the Murray-Darling Basin, it's slightly bigger than the entire country of Egypt or the combination of France and Spain joined together. So it's a significantly large area. Majority of the agriculture production come from there, and then it's entirely dependent upon the surface water capturing in that basin as well. And also it is significant on cultural importance of our First Nation people as well. Next one, thanks. So what we are doing is using the climate change prediction of modeling, as well as the GIS information, soil productivity, and also plant pathology and molecular pathology, where we can model and provide tools for farmers to manage the crop selection as well as the use of water in these particular area as well. So we can use these models for different products, plants, and then that gives a much broader knowledge for the farmers. But also in the meantime, for the government to provide infrastructure facilities in the future as well. If the climate change is going to change the way the rainfall we can capture in different parts of the country. Next one, thanks. So this is a work we have done with the Murray-Darling Basin, looking at the ecological condition of the natural resource management using hydrology, satellite imagery, and the food web to come up with the predictive models where we can predict what happen in next 10, 15, 20 years down the track using the climate modeling and providing management tools and the knowledge for infrastructure development as well as the farmers to manage their large farms as well. Next one, thanks. There's a video which gives you an indication. So if you can play the video from the beginning, I think it's starting halfway through.
Agriculture thrives in the Greater Hamilton region, and this new online mapping system, based on research and modelling by Deakin University, is designed to act as a checklist to help you dig in and watch your investments grow. It unearths the facts about land capabilities and highlights those areas ripe for further farm diversification and investment. Click on the series of interactive digital maps to view land use potential based on soil type, topography, water availability, and climate outlook. You can also search by commodity, pick a crop and see where it grows or where it may grow in the future. A quick reference guide makes navigation simple, with a range of additional tools including high-resolution aerial photography and area calculators for measuring potential sites. There's never been a better time to diversify in farming, so visit growingreaterhamilton.com.au and start plotting your farming future.
Thank you. This is one of the study we did with the farmers in that area and giving the tools for them to manage their farm in the longer term. So next slide, please. And also
agriculture thrives in the...
Yeah, so we are taking that knowledge base, what we developed in Australia, into Southeast Asia. We are working collaboratively with the farmers and farming groups in Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam with our partner institutions to look at the soil type, the usage of water, and particularly in those part of the countries where the rice is the main production, food product. So how can we work with them to advise them what sort of water usage, but also to look at during dry season, whether we can look at some of the non-rice crops as well. So the key message here is we have to work in partnership with the farmers and the regulatory authorities to predict and work for the future as well. And the other aspect is also the regulatory framework in the country is very, very important. Therefore, the regulation and the policy has to go hand in hand with the socio-economic benefit to the farmers and a broader agriculture and food production. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that presentation, Professor Bhaskaran. And it does give a very comprehensive picture of sustainable water use in Australia. And of course, those who are in Australia know the challenges the regulator has with the Murray-Darling Basin as you work through that sustainability. So thank you for that, and also for showing us the international connections through with on how you research and that very good digital look at how things are going. So with that introduction, let's now shift to look at the coastal end of floodwater management of floodwater agriculture and the role of coastal reservoirs. And what a great introduction to Professor Sitaram, who is the Pro-Vice Chancellor, International Research Partnerships. I think he's coming onto the screen very shortly. And you can see from that very impressive CV that he too has got a very distinguished background, a very good international look, including linking into China, and of course, Canada, and getting that whole international perspective when you're looking at this very important issue of coastal reservoirs. So over to you, Professor Sitaram.
So good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you pretty well. Go for it.
Thank you. I had a serious network issue, so that I've logged in through my phone, but I think I'm able to communicate. I don't have any presentation. Very good afternoon to all of you. I will start with a punchline. I know we are talking about India and Australia. India is not running out of water. Water is actually, in fact, running out of India. This is my punchline of my talk today, okay? Because we have seen many United Nations documents showing red India everywhere. But my point is, India is not running out of water. Water is running out of India. We cannot call India as a water shortage country because we have 1,000 millimeter and above average annual rainfall. So coming back to Australia, Australia has an average, annual rainfall. I just take out, it's about 465 millimeter per year, half of India, and a very large country. You don't have any problem of land, but we do have a lot of problem of land because our population is too large. 1.3 billion people in the small area when compared to what is Australia. Why I'm talking about that today, first, before that, I would like to congratulate AIBC, Australia India Business Center, to coming up with this particular topic of shaping of the future of water usage in agriculture. See, I think the problem is very well posed because the agriculture is the one which consumes 80% of the water. 80% of the water. 10% is domestic, 10% is 10 to 12% is industrial usage, depending on how industrialized that nation is. Okay. So if you are talking about anything, because the food, water, and energy is an excess. So to solve this problem, we need to look at the water solution. Water problem is very, very critical. So if you assume that there is no water, there's nothing you can do about food, and there's nothing you can do about energy. So my presumption is we do have a lot of water. We need to conserve. We have to use the nature-based solutions. And where is this water? Just let me give you a small statistics. India is a country. Let me talk about the world first. 2 billion people did not have regular access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food in 2019 alone. Maybe because of pandemic. And to end this shortage of safe, nutritious, sufficient food, we need to double the agriculture productivity in the next 15 years. That's a big challenge, actually. So to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture, we need to solve the problem of water. See, just to give you some statistics globally, 821 million, that is 1 in 9 people are undernourished. 277.2 million people undernourished in South Asia alone. 3 in 10 stunted children are Indians. Over 40% of the total Indian workforce is employed in the agriculture sector. If global food prices double, India could lose up to $50 billion in GDP. With considering all this, agriculture is very critical for India. India as a country, we need to look at to solve the problem. So from water stress to water scarcity, we need to move towards water security. Water stress has definitely caused many countries around the world a lot of problem, particularly because of increased population and also the climate change. So climate change is one critical factor which has affected all of us. That the scientific evidence is very clear. The climate is changing and will continue to change. This is as per the IPCC of 2018. Many of the impacts of climate change are affecting the society and the environment through changes in global, regional, and local water systems. Climate change will affect global water resources in multiple ways with complex spatio-temporal patterns, feedback effects, and interaction between physical and human processes. This includes directly through hydrological systems in terms of water availability, water quality, and extreme events, and indirectly through changes in water demand that in turn can have impacts on energy and food security. So this is expected to make droughts more intense and increase global flood risk. So climate change, water, and sustainable level development is very critical. And this is where I like to congratulate ABC to coming up with a fantastic topic. So let me come straight into the problem what I am posing. Why coastal zone management is very critical. Most of the large cities, okay, with some 10 million or more population are located in coastal areas. And Australia is definitely mostly coastal. Most of the cities are located in the coastal areas. So the Global Risk Perception Survey conducted by 900 recognized experts by the World Economic Forum reports that highest level of societal impact for the next 10 years will be the water crisis, and that too in the coastal areas. And we are already seeing a large number of movement of people from urban areas because of COVID-19. At least in India, a large section of people moved away from the urban areas. So our country is a village-centric country. We have more than 6 lakh villages, and to really solve any problem and see a $5 trillion economy of government of India, we need to do something for mission water. Water should be available to every nook and corner, not just the drinking water, particularly the water for agriculture. And because 80% of the available resources is used for agriculture. So coming back to the point, so has India done enough since independence? So we got independent in 1947. At that time, we had 300 large dams. I think this August audience know what is a large dam. It is, as per the Committee of Large Dams, a dam which has 1 million meter cube of water or more, or a dam which is 15 meters or taller, or a dam which has a very unique structure, which is called as a large dam. So when we got independence, we had 300 such large dams to store water for all purposes, multi-purposes, agriculture, energy, hydro energy, and drinking water, for all purposes actually. And since independence, how many of you think that what India has done? India has built 6,000 large dams, ladies and gentlemen. And we have dams all over India. You know, we do not have any more space now to build inland. There is no place for building dams inland. 6,000 large dams, but we are still storing 8% of total annual rainfall received on our land. Only 8% we are storing. That means the rest of the water, where is it going? 82% of the water is simply joining the ocean every year religiously through our rivers. India is very rich in water resources. As I told you, we do, most of our coastal area receive average of 3,000 to 5,000 millimeter annual rainfall. And our total, if you count the entire country area, it is 1,000 millimeter or even above. This is not even 1 year in the last 100 years, we have gone below 1,000 millimeter. When such a huge rainfall is coming in, but it all comes in 3.5 months of monsoon. So we, time immemorially, Indian knowledge, our Indian people knew that they need to store water for the driest period of the year. That is about 8 to 9 months. They knew that, and they used to do that. So most of this is actually sort of destroyed in our villages. So we need to look at now, most of our cities are located in the coastal area. So we need to look at sustainable water resources management, particularly using downstream water management, I call. And today's my topic was actually coastal zone management, floodwater agriculture. As I told you, there is enough water. 82% of the water is still flowing through our rivers religiously in 3 months. We need to store them. And also India doesn't have any more land places inside, and it's a very difficult terrain. None of the interlinking river projects have worked. So we need to look at to develop these reservoirs, coastal reservoirs. Some of you know, these coastal reservoirs have really helped many countries, particularly China has done a fantastic job on development of coastal reservoir. Some of you might see my book along with 7 other colleagues of mine on sustainable water resources development using coastal reservoir, which has just appeared about 2 months back in Elsevier, which is a very nice collection of work on coastal reservoir. And I also happens to be the president of the International Association of Coastal Reservoir Research. Please see our work and also our colleagues' work on iacrr.org. And I would like to also tell you, in this effort of water and making sustainable water available to all, both for India and Australia, and we at IIT Guwahati, jointly with Western Sydney University, have created an Australia-India Water Center. This Australia-India Water Center, which is an online platform of 12 universities of India and 10 universities of Australia. As a combined effort we have formulated, please look at AIWC website at iitguwahati.iitg.ac.in. There is a website called Australia-India Water Center, and we are planning to start discussing together and solve problems of mutual interest, both for Australia and India, because as there is a lot of learning can happen mutually working together on these areas. So let me come straight into the coastal reservoirs. There is a lot of water which is flowing into the ocean. We can store them, and these flood water, which was not at all considered as a usable water, now it could be stored, and we can actually connect them along the coastal line. So I have a concept called Sarovar Mala, which goes very well with the Bharatmala project. So we could connect all the coastal reservoirs, which we can create. And there is one such big project planned by our Honorable Prime Minister in Gujarat, in Kutch region. Project is called Kalpasar, which is going to irrigate lands using contour canals, entire Kutch area, which is in the Gujarat state of India. So if you really want to meet sustainable development goals, I think water is going to be the critical, and we have only 10 more years left to meet the sustainable development goals. And we are already in 2020, 2030, we have to do that. I think we need to act very fast, and coastal reservoir is going to play a major role. And some of you know, ladies and gentlemen, Singapore has a beautiful coastal reservoir called Marina Barrage, which is a first generation coastal reservoir, but the Chinese have what is called as a second generation coastal reservoir in the Yangtze Bay basin. So, which is actually supplies almost 60 to 70% of water requirement for the Shanghai city, which is Chinkosa Reservoir. So this Chinkosa Reservoir would be a model for us to emulate, because this is a second generation coastal reservoir wherein we do not block the mouth of the river like what has been done in Marina Barrage, and which can store large quantity of coastal water. And through this, we can do the coastal agriculture. Particularly there are the seawater rice inventions, which are fantastic actually. With a little bit of brackish water, one can grow, and we can solve the problem of food production. And as the population, global population is actually rising. So by 2100, it's expected to be 9 to 13 billion. So we need to double our agriculture production. To do that, I think coastal management of water is very critical. And I think we should do a lot of effort in linking up these river linking through the coastal area, because then it becomes simpler also, because we do not need to cross any of the hills or cut through because of the environmental considerations. So we could develop, particularly India has a great potential to link up through Sarovar Mala, and we could solve the problem of water. And once we solve the water resources problem, water availability is there, we could definitely do very well in doubling our agriculture production, because agriculture takes away 80% of water. We need to definitely educate our agriculturists as well on the usage of water, because they're now using large amount of water for a given land. So there must be new innovations happening in agri sector. And that is where, it's very critical. And water is going to be the first one. And then you have to do a lot of innovation in agri sector. And at IIT Guwahati, we have actually put up a new group on smart agriculture in the Rural Technology Center, so that we could do many of these work to solve the water problem and to have sustainable water resources for coastal agriculture and coastal development, which will go a long way for many countries, and particularly for Australia. Definitely Murray-Darling River Basin can be developed along the coastal area. With few of these remarks, I thank again DC for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts, and I will be available for a discussion if there is any. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thanks very much for that very passionate and stirring presentation. And that has really given us quite a few good questions and good information, particularly on the importance of coastal reservoirs and your forward look of sustainability that you also brought in your talk. A very good preamble, in fact, to our next session, which is a question and answer session, and to our audience there of live views and our business communities. Questions that you have asked will get answered after the webinar if they're not asked here, as our time is always limited in Q&As. So let me kick it off first with a more provocative question. And the question to each of our panelists is, what is your perspective on this question? Is there any embargo on excessive groundwater extraction and its wastage in India and Australia? Let's kick it off with you. What's your perspective on that? You're unmute. Yep.
Time first, am I, Jim? Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to ask each panelist. I'm just taking it through. Yeah.
Well, there's always been some type of license restrictions in relation to any water that's utilised in Australia. So there is an embargo in that there are limitations with licenses, either river or land. So yes, there is a very tough law within Australia.
Okay. Kim Russell, your view on that? I'm sure it's straight up your alley. Yeah. Unmute, please. Yeah.
Australia's done some good work in this, with some, would say, some slightly perverse outcomes in recent years, with very high value crops commanding the prices that they can afford, and it puts pressure on less profitable crops to obtain water on the open market. The system in Australia, though, is very good with high security water feeding permanent plantings and annual crops being fed out of less secure nature of low security water. And that allows these crops to expand and contract with available water. So the system is quite robust, but has been put under significant pressure in recent drought years.
Thanks for that. And Professor Bhaskaran, you've got that good perspective right across the country, yeah?
Yeah, particularly in Australia, as Con and Kim mentioned, that withdrawal of water, it's you have a license requirement, and the water is considered as a property of the Crown. So you need to have permission to withdraw the quantity and when and how. Whereas in some parts of the world, access to water for human consumption is a human right. So it's individuals' rights to access the water. I worked in Indonesia and India and other parts of the world as well, where the community thinks it's my right to access water. I can dig a well and access the groundwater without any permission and so forth. That's because it's a human right. And particularly, it's very strongly believed in countries like Indonesia. So we are looking at from two different contexts as well. So I think the social aspect and community aspect needs to come into this picture as well.
Thank you. Professor Sitaram, your view on that issue?
Thank you. I think, the groundwater is very precious, but unfortunately, as Bhaskaran was highlighting to you, in India, there is no control. People think that it is their right. Okay, many of the cities, particularly Bangalore, has almost like every 30 feet by 30 feet, there is a borewell. I'm going into, and the groundwater is simply dropping. Groundwater is simply dropping, and there are a lot of other issues of contamination, fluoride, when you go deep into the groundwater. So I feel there is a policy required to control the groundwater, because groundwater is a resource which is not a very huge one when compared to what I talk about large-scale utilization. That's why when I focused on coastal reservoir, this is the large quantity of water, what I'm talking about. It is not a small quantity of water. You can store, if our Kalpasar project in Gulf of Kutch is completed, it's going to be one of the largest reservoirs in entire India. One of the largest reservoirs in the entire India, even area-wise and also the quantity-wise. So that's the kind of large number we are talking about for the growth, both industrialization as well as agriculture. I'm not much talking about the drinking water there. Okay, but coming to the borewells today, even our agriculturists are also, if you go to some village side, they'll just put on, because electricity is also free for them. So they put on the pump, just go and sleep. So it will be even flooded. So they can grow even in an area, dry area, a crop of rice. That's the kind of, anarchy has been developed. So I think it's a very high time to control the groundwater usage. And we need to develop alternatives though for farmers to grow, because there is a huge demand of food production required for a country like India. And definitely, it also will apply to some extent in Australia as well, because I've been across all of the Australia. So I am slightly aware of problems even in Australia as well, because your rainfall is very less and your major population lives in coastal area. So you also should look at some of the new alternatives than just depend on the groundwater. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dr. Sharad Jain, your perspective on it?
Yeah. So in India, usage of groundwater is controlled by what is called Easement Act. And according to this act, if a person owns a piece of land, then he can extract as much groundwater as he requires. But in view of this, there has been rapid and pervasive decline of groundwater all across the country. And to check that, now regulations are being imposed in two ways. One is what we call, say, zone-wise regulation, and another is use-wise. So the zones have been identified in the country where annual withdrawal is more than annual recharge. These are called dark zones, where groundwater tables are progressively falling. So in these type of zones, now there are very stringent restrictions on withdrawing water except for drinking purposes. If an industry has to be established and they require some water, they need to take permission before they can withdraw any water for industrial use. So similar type of restrictions are being imposed in various zones, depending upon the decline of the water table or depending upon the balance between annual recharge and annual withdrawal. The idea is that all those places where the annual withdrawal is more than annual recharge, no large scale withdrawal should be permitted till these reasons, these places go back to the safe category. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I'll ask our colleagues from India one question that's just come in, and I'll ask that to you, Professor Sitharam, first, and that is, Australian water resources are highly regulated as opposed to India. There are legislation in India which is still the legacy of British India. How is India reforming its water world given the diversity and political differences? That is, I think, a very provocative question, but over to you.
You see, thank you. Thank you for the question. You know, India is such a large country, and also just now you heard a lot of differences, what I said and what Sharad Jain said. Okay. See, there is a lot of differences. All of you followed what I said is there is no rampant because farmer is quite independent. I completely disagree with Jain because there may be rules on the paper, but nothing is followed on the ground. See, every city, every house has a borewell. I mean, I will show you in a city like Bangalore, which is almost 10 million people or 12 million people. Every house has a borewell. So I think we need to really, India wants to become a 5 trillion economy. We need to really regulate water usage properly because, and also educate our farmers because majority of the water is used by the farmers, 80%. The usage statistics shows clearly. So I think we need to do something significant and not just on the paper, translate into the reality where farmers are also educated and made aware of the issues, challenges, so that they will follow. So I think there is a lot of things to learn from Israel on this agricultural usage of water. And India need to learn from Israel, country like Israel, where there is a lot of shortage of water. But we need to do something about it. Otherwise, we will be in dire strait to really handle not just the water, food and energy as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dr. Sharad Jain, did you wish to comment on that?
Yes, well, in India, you know, because of scarcity of water across various river basins, many times water management spills from technical domain to political domain and public domain. And there have been many cases where timely decisions could not be taken or implemented. To overcome this, a lot of initiatives are now in progress. For example, we have a rule or a law according to which if there is a water sharing dispute between two states, then there is a provision to constitute a tribunal which goes through the documents, which goes through the demands and gives its award. There have been delays in awarding the decision by the tribunals. So to overcome this delay, now there is a talk that we are going to formulate what we call standing tribunals. See, in earlier times, tribunals were constituted on case basis, but now there will be a standing tribunal, and whenever there is a dispute, the affected parties will go to the tribunal and hopefully they will pronounce the decisions in time. Then to change the management practices, we are now going to establish river boards, river basin boards. And these boards will consist of representatives from various states through which a river flows. And the board will be empowered to take decisions concerning water management in that particular river basin by treating the river basin as one unit rather than based on political or administrative subdivisions. So a lot of changes are going to come. We are also trying to remove fragmentation in decision making, because earlier times or even in present times also a lot of ministries and organizations are involved in decision making. So the idea is now to bring everyone on board so that we have one unified mechanism for decision making. So hopefully with time, we will have strong legislation as well as a strong policy framework for management of water resources. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. And our colleagues, Professor Bhaskaran and Kim Russell, with all their experience behind, you can see here the opportunity for a great dialogue in this area in the few months and years ahead of us, where we can learn from each other. So with that one, I'll ask Vish Viswanathan, our National Industry Chair for Make in India and the Vice President of the New South Wales chapter of the IBC, to deliver a vote of thanks. Over to you, Vish.
Good evening, all. And first of all, I want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land. This is a great panel, and we have great discussions happening on the very important topic, which is on water, which is so importantly mentioned in the Peter Varghese strategy on India economic strategy. And some of the areas which they have identified very clearly are in the water policy engagement, research and development projects, water information systems, water efficiency, water governance, and irrigation projects. And all this, most of these topics have been covered in today's discussion and also especially applying to the coastal area, which is very, very important, like Dr. Sitaraman has said. And in fact, I must thank all the speakers, Kim Russell, about the technologies, what has been applied in Australia, which can be used in India. And especially one important thing, what you said, the recycled water is the key to the shaping the water, shaping of the future of the agriculture. That's a very important point, what you have said. And of course, there are other technologies like the GIS and drones, which is definitely also being shared in India. And Dr. Sharad Jain was talking about the environmental flows of the sustainable resources development and the issues and challenges in the river management and the threats to the biodiversity. And these are very, very important things to be learned. And the kind of methods which is being used for the environmental, that is also very important. And then Dr. Bhaskaran is an expert from Australia, and he was talking about the surface water, how that is playing a major role in Australia, and a classic example of this research projects in Murray-Darling Basin, which is a huge project. It's an excellent research what has been achieved at Deakin University, and also his own expertise in the water over the years, which will be very useful for Australia-India Business Council in engaging with India. And Dr. Sitaram has been very passionate about the use of water in agriculture, and also, especially as he said, that the coastal water management systems and the coastal reservoir systems, these are all, and also the synergy which is happening in the water, Australia-India Water Center. So some of these things, if we look into this much more deeply, we have a lot of messages how the Australia and India can share collaboratively. What I believe this year is year of collaboration. That is the motto of the Australia-India Business Council. So we do want to see collaborative strategies in water and water technologies, and especially in the wastewater management as well. This is something which we have not covered in this topic, but the importance of the wastewater management. And as you can see, the wastewater also plays a major role in detecting the COVID-19, that's what they have found. And in fact, an Indian scientist is also involved in this in Australia. So, we definitely have many, many opportunities. And we're also impressed with many questions coming from the audience. And we have seen there are some more questions which cannot be answered due to the time restrictions. We do want to get back to you, and I must thank all of you and all the panelists and Dr. Bhaskaran, Mr. Kim Russell, Dr. Sharad Jain, Mr. Sitaraman, and all these panelists, and also our own team, Con Devisianis, who is chairing the agribusiness team. And we have, the whole thing is not possible without the support team. We have Wendy Farrell, who is our secretary, Vishal Kumar, who is running the technologies. Aditya is assisting as an agribusiness intern, and Silvana, who is also supporting us from the agribusiness chapters. And we also want to thank all the industry chapter chairs and the AIBC family. More importantly, I want to thank our chair, Mr. Jim Varghese, who is sort of spearheading Australia India Business Council to achieve meaningful business outcomes, and not only through the webinars, but also many other events. So we are in for a very good year in terms of achieving collaborative strategies. And this is Vish Vishwanathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vish, and for those words of appreciation. I'd like to now conclude this webinar with asking each of our speakers just to give me 3 words, no more than 3 words. That's all you need to do. 3 words that for you describes this webinar for you and for this audience. So let me start with Con. Your 3 words?
Jim, that's almost an impossibility after this. But let's say efficient water catchment.
That's very good. That's a very good kickoff for that. I'm just going to look at my screen now as the way to take that, and you can all think about it. Professor Bhaskaran, your 3 words?
Knowledge sharing, partnership, and sustainable management.
Very good. See, they're all coming up there with a real bit of a passion in there. Kim Russell, your 3 words? You have to unmute. You have to unmute.
Yes, so my 3 words would be measure, monitor, and manage.
Thank you for that. Professor Sitharam, your 3 words that describe this event?
Yeah, sustainable development, coastal reservoirs, coastal agriculture.
Very good. That's another good set of three words that really give us a really good hit on that. Dr. Sharad Jain, your 3 words?
Yeah, my 3 words would be sustainable water management.
Sustainable water management. Thank you. And Vish, your 3 words?
Yes, planning, partnership, and collaboration.
So when we reflect on those 3 words, and our audience is listening to this, you can see the different perspectives. Now, for example, I could use the regulator, sustainability, and climate change. So each of these are like a mirror for us to have a look at our panelists today. We have questions, many questions that have been asked, and those questions, we will try and endeavor to answer them. Some of them are on the more technical end, the other are very, very important questions on the non-technical end. In fact, there cannot be a more important issue facing our planet at the moment than water. It is right at the core of our civilizations and what we do right across the globe. So we now come towards the end. I've got time for just one question to ask, and that is, and again, answer it as since those in Australia didn't answer the previous question given to our colleagues in India. Let me start with Professor Bhaskaran. So what is the final message you'll give for water and climate change, just in a short sentence or 2?
I would say there is climate variability. We need to learn to be resilient. We need to be adaptive, and we need to be innovative. in managing the water.
Thank you for that. Kim Russell?
Yeah, I think one of the big steps for us in the 80s, which is a similar sort of time frame and technology frame in India, is to impart how to schedule irrigations so that growers understand when plant water use and when to schedule irrigation. I think would be a huge, hugely beneficial.
Con, your comment on that?
One of the big things that out of our relationship with India is education and training. We need to have some level of education and training on water sustainability, and I agree, river and coastal management.
Okay, thank you. And Vish, my final question as I close the session. You're the chair of Make in India. We've now listened to some very good presentations today of how to continue the dialogue. What's your advice on how to continue that dialogue?
I think we should identify some pilot projects. Definitely with the help of Dr. Bhaskaran and Kim and Dr. Sharad Jain and Professor Sita Raman, we can identify a couple of projects which we can definitely collaborate and then move forward. That will be meaningful outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So, Professor Sitaram, if I asked you for your most important project for Australia-India dialogue, what would that be?
So it will be networking. So we have started already with Australia-India Water Center with 12 universities of Australia and 12 universities of India coming together. So I think that would be a very good beginning. And I think if Australia Business Center, India Business Center could support that activity and nurture that, that would go a long way in both water management and also in agriculture production. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sharad Jain, your view of the most important project for you, just one?
Yeah, so I think I'll agree with Professor Sitaraman this time and support him in saying that yes, networking for collaborative growth and development. I think that's the best way to move forward, and this will be beneficial for both the sides.
Thank you very much. And here at the IBC, we're very conscious of time and we're finishing pretty much exactly on time. I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions. They've been excellent. We've set a platform for dialogue that's second to none. So can I thank everyone, including our listeners who are our live viewers, the business communities, and those that are going to see this event, which we estimate to be about 5,000 before the event and post the event. So namaste and good evening.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.